to give it just a minute to let everybody get in here because we are live. So let me add that so we can see. And for those of y'all that are just tuning in, welcome to the new year. I figured that since we're starting a new year, we needed to start it out on the right foot because this year has the potential to not be good. And I think that if you haven't already started preparing, um, you don't have any more time to waste. You have got to be doing it now. And I wanted to start out with my good friend, none other than NC Scout from Brushbeater on here, because he's got a whole lot of pertinent stuff that you need to be digging into. Um, and I wanted him to chat a little bit about this magnificent beast right here and the other stuff that he's got going on. So, in case y'all didn't know, Matt does a whole lot of teaching and instructing in classes, everything from carbine classes to RTO, signals intelligence. My hands down favorite, y'all have heard me talk about it ad nauseum, the scout course that he does, and now the new Recce course that I have yet to have the privilege of taking, but I hope to rectify that at some point. But he has got a wide smorgasbord of classes you can take, but also books out, including 2 or 3 bestsellers now.
Two.
2? Okay.
Well,
Um,
three if you count the Kindle version also of Gorilla's Guide to Signals Intelligence.
gotcha. So he's
So
got
I don't count them as separate books, but do you have a copy of the SIGINT book yet?
not the SIGINT book. No, I've got to grab one of those from you.
Oh
I,
yeah, I've got and for everybody in the audience, I've got a fresh batch coming that should be here this week. So you're looking for that. They sell out too fast. I mean, that's not a complaint. It's just I can't keep up with the demand on them. It's like each order I'm ordering more and more of them, higher quantities, and it's like every time they come in, they just go.
there's a clue in there somewhere.
Like each order, yeah, it's that delicate balance, man.
Yep, yep.
It's
So
like you don't want to
Matt's
order
got a
too many and then sit on them for a year.
well, Matt's got multiple books out. Gorilla's Guide to Baofeng Radio, the Signals Intelligence book, Gorilla Dispatch Volume 1 and 2. Um, I highly recommend you get all of those, and that's kind of what I wanted to have him on tonight to talk a little bit about stuff he's doing, stuff he's seeing, and I'll let him get into the details. But don't let the title of the book, especially this one, fool you. Even if you've got something other than a Baofeng radio, or excuse me, let me to quote the great not a Rubicon, the Bufang. If you've got something other than a Bufang radio, this is still applicable. Okay, like 90% of the book still applies regardless of the radio you've got. And communications is going to be extraordinarily huge. And I highly, highly, highly encourage you to get on that, whether it's just local communications for friends and family around the neighborhood to reaching out further. So, Matt, what's give me a little the for the folks out there that aren't familiar with your stuff, the just starting out with the Gorilla's Guide to Baofeng, the driving idea behind
So
that for you.
I was contacted a couple of years ago by a friend that it has some involvement with USASOC, which I know, two of us in here are familiar, very familiar with USASOC, I'm sure. But the United States Army Special Operations Command. And in class, I've been in business since, for anybody that doesn't know, I've been in business since 2016. So, I'm not kind of a new phenomenon. I'm kind of a new phenomenon on social media, but I'm not new to this community by any means. A little bit about me: I was an 11 Bravo, an infantryman. Had several qualifiers behind that, but whatever. It's not a big of a deal. Went to Iraq twice, served in Kirkuk and Samara. So I did 2 tours there, and then re-enlisted, got to Fort Bragg, went to the long range surveillance company there, and had a hell of a lot of fun. Went to Afghanistan with them, did a lot of fun things. We were part of SOTF South, and just all around really good time. Got to work closely with SIGINT guys. I learned a lot about communications while I was there, and I was a part of a long range surveillance unit. So in case anybody doesn't know what a LURS unit is, you can look that up. LURS companies don't exist anymore. The Army got rid of them, and they're kind of having buyer's remorse on that now. But anyhow, that's a little bit of a background about me. I was contacted by a friend, however, to write, and this was a couple of years ago, to write a short, to the point handbook for the most common radio in the world, which is a Baofeng. And what we're learning is that, and what we have learned in austere environments across the world where we're conducting unconventional warfare and even conventional warfare in some cases, Syria being one such example, is that we're finding a proliferation of a lot of these, analog basic radios. When you couple that with the fact that a lot of the baseline skills, that skill set is not necessarily present in all cases to understand, all right, this is what VHF is, this is what UHF is, this is what this device actually does. Write a handbook for the laity out there that they can just pick that up. Any soldier could pick this up, reference it, read it, and then, go forward. And so it was written from that perspective. The mass market version of the book. So I was once someone, that same friend, referenced it, looked at it. So, you ought to publish this. This would be really cool. And didn't really think anything of it. Like, all right, whatever. There's a million books on radio that are all better than this one. So whatever. But did and contacted another good friend of ours, who of everybody in here, who's a very well known best-selling author, Angry American, Chris Weatherman, and he said, "Nah, man, you need to self-publish that because if you go through a publishing house, business-wise, this is going to be a little smarter." So went through Amazon. There were some hoops I had to jump through to make that work. The mass market version is not the original version of the book. The original version of the handbook, actually, I offer in the store, brushbeater.store, and that's the top spiral bound version. That's why the mass market version, there's a few more critical reviews out there. I'll be nice. I won't say that you're a fucked up dipshit, and just we'll just leave it at that. Oh, can I cuss? Can I not? Whatever. I haven't even been drinking today. It's New Year's resolution. I'm cutting back on the wall of liquor I got back here. But anyway, point is though is that I could not format the encryption tables, which are the NSA standard trigram encryption tables. Right. This is a training pad that's included in it. That's very real. For a couple of people who think they're smarter than they really are out there that might be listening to this, that's all real. I didn't make that shit up. So included all of that, and these are things that people told me. This is a requirement. This is what we want, and so that's what went into it. But anyway, I couldn't get those tables correct for Amazon's publishing system that they use in house. And the only way that I could fix that and rectify that in a correct form factor is to just uploaded as a PDF. And so that led to some issues with bleed over in the corners and whatever. That's the reason it looks the way it does, and that's the reason there's no Kindle version, because it doesn't work with Kindle.
Gotcha.
Sorry, if that's a non-starter for you, and I've had plenty of people. Oh, when's the Kindle version? Well, if I could have, I would have, and it's just that simple.
Yeah, this is one of those things. You need the book version though of this kind of stuff, because you need it for whenever you ain't got things like a Kindle.
Well, man, I think I told you before. I told you before that the writing's big. My eyes aren't getting any better.
Well, yeah, it's and I'm beginning to appreciate that, as I'm getting into my late 30s now.
Listen at it.
And
yeah, wow.
I used to have 2015 and 2017, and now it's like, I'm starting to feel that eye strain, and it's
mine's 20 bad. So
yeah.
Yeah, I went from 20 that they estimate some are like 28, 2010 back in the day, to now I've got 20/20 distance with a bad astigmatism, but I got to have reading glasses now for up close. And I'm not happy about that. I got to carry the dang things around with me all the freaking time and don't like it. But
well, Matt, I'm really glad you wrote that book, because, like I'm a ham technician now. But when I got my Baofeng radio, and you get those instructions that come with it, I was afraid to touch it, because I kind of thought it was going to blow up or something, And you go through the menu and there's things in it, and I ain't got a clue which any of them are, and most of them people don't. And so I got your book and read it and said it, like, don't have the light on, don't do that. But the manuals with these radios, the radios have a lot of features, but you don't, because the thing is like, well, it's bad. It's bad, Chinese, into American version, and then, it's terrible. Yeah. And now I feel like I'm whole now, I can operate my Baofeng. So. But yeah,
and it's I mean, it literally takes you from 0 to 100. I mean, I wrote it in a way that, as a former non-commissioned officer, knowing that there's certain realities about dealing with Joe, and dealing with guys that you have to be very literal. There's a reason that military field manuals are written the way they are. They used to be written better than they are now. I think that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot of lowest common denominator going on there.
Oh yeah. But you have to give people a step by step, and it's just like any other military training paradigm that works. It's crawl, walk, run. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
100%.
You have to create a baseline first, then move forward. And that's why the first 2 chapters of the book deal with the Baofeng radio. Okay. The rest of the book deals with austere communications and realizing that, this applies to anything, right? This applies to anything. Building antennas. There's a reason that in sniper school, building antennas, right? Arsenic, you build an antenna. You learn how to build antennas out of claymore wire, right? There's a reason that these things are taught the way they are to infantrymen, right? Who might have to deal with this stuff because your shit's going to break in the field. All right. So because my shit's broken, how do I unfuck this? Because I need to have this capability. We don't have time to sit here and bitch about, okay, well, I need, X, Y, Z so I can talk to my fucking team 100 meters over there. Like that's stupid. All right. That argument and that whole thing, that whole genre is fucking dumb. That stuff is irrelevant, nearly irrelevant. You need to be able to communicate over, more significant distances. When you're talking about putting together potentially an underground unconventional warfare element, that takes on a whole new series of considerations than, you know, some airsofter that found live rounds magically and is, you know, putting on a chest rig and, oh, I'm going to get on Instagram and I'm going to take a bunch of pictures. Like, you know, look, that might be fine for a certain segment. Yeah, I'm going to shit all over those people and I'm going to keep on doing it. You know, that might be fine for a certain segment of folks out there. And maybe you want to do fucking backflips with your flip flops on or whatever the fuck they're doing these days. Like, whatever that is, man, it might be really good for clicks. But the reality is this, you know, you don't have, if you don't have those bona fides, you need to find somebody who does and train with them, you know. And so the radio is one aspect of it. So you need to unlock, all right, now what all capabilities do I have here? If I recognize I'm walking into a you know, unconventional warfare environment, UW environment, right? I need to recognize what these people actually have. What do they actually have? What are they going to have? Now I step forward into how do I create the maximum capability based on what they have? And then how do I create a further capability out of that by introducing digital communications into the mix? How do I actually come up with a communications plan that is competent, not, hey, buddy, I bought 100 police radios at a fucking auction and we're just going to cut them on and see if they work. Like, dude, you know, no, I'm sorry. Or using systems that are well known to be compromised. No, you create your own. And if you don't have that infrastructure already set up, you create your own in that environment. You have to know how to do that. I mean, this is an 18 Echo mission, by the way, Special Forces Communications Sergeant. And there's a reason that those guys talk to me. There's a reason I have them in class. There's a, you know, and I'm not saying to my own horn. I'm just telling you, this is what it is. This is why, you know, I've been doing this a long time. I have a reputation that is sterling. If you know, anybody out there wants to look it up, this book, the book is kind of a recent phenomena. But then you know, you attract all these guys that are gamma personality types that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. They hang out on Reddit all day, you know, and then they couldn't. The thing is, they want to become online influencers, and they think because they can't get ahead, they don't necessarily have the background to get ahead in the firearms world. I'm kind of diving into a rabbit hole here, but just hear me out, guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
They can't get ahead in the firearms world because everybody looking is going to be like, well, you know, what did you do? You didn't do shit. You know, I mean, and so there's that. So then they jump into something else, and then it becomes a fucking golf game from there. Oh, you don't have this piece of equipment. Well, I'm better than you, or you don't, blah, blah, blah. So I know more than you. And you just get sick of that shit, man. You get sick. That's the thing. Randy over at Not a Rubicon. That's why I appreciate his sarcasm and his wit.
He is awesome.
Yeah. He does it out of entertainment value, though. Like he's doing it because it entertains him. I do it because I get fed up.
Wrong.
No. He's not wrong. I mean, it's cheap entertainment partly for me, but at the same time, it's like, you know, I don't like when people are shitting on somebody else when right now, you know, you need to be establishing a baseline, and if you don't have the background in this, you can't point to, hey, I did this at this time when it mattered. I didn't sit on fucking Reddit, Instagram, wherever, and regurgitate shit coming out of Ukraine. If you ain't never done it, well, you know, full stop. You know, full stop. Let's not, you know, you don't have a dog in the fight. Sit back. You might throw some technical details out there, but I promise you, I got you on that one too.
Matt, you're saying that what we have said, I think we have said that on here about every single time we've been on here. And I know I'm going to say this every time we are on here, is that, look, what you guys need to do that are watching this, you need to make sure that you get away from the keyboard and you go out and do something. Go out and train. Go to a course. Go to I don't care. A course. Go to a communication course. Put the rucksack on your back. Go up that hill. Whatever.
Yeah.
All right. You got, like you said, it's crawl, walk, run. You got to start someplace. Do it. Get away from the computer and go do it. So
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%.
And going to what you're saying, Matt, you and I have kind of touched privately on this before. One of the things I appreciate is that you did this kind of stuff around the Baofeng. Not that it's the best radio in the world, not that it's this awesome thing that's just, the perfect God's gift communications, but it's one of the most ubiquitous things out there. It's what most people can get and will get. It's better for them to learn how to use what they've got than to wish they had some $200 fancy radio. I'd rather somebody learn how to use that PSA gun that they got than sitting around wishing for a $2,000, Gucci name brand rifle. Same thing.
Well, right, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with having nice equipment, man.
No, not at all.
Not a thing in the world, dude. That's, if you can afford nice equipment, that's cool. Just understand, though, that there's a pitfall and a weakness inherent to everything you have. Don't hang your hat on, well, it's dollar amount means that it's capable.
Or
let me tell you something. My friend Kay from Combat Studies Group, he was a GRS guy for the CIA, and top-notch dude, top-notch trainer. He's going to be at my place in March for Ground Rod 1 and 2. He's doing a night vision class at my place. And he's also doing gunfight concepts. So it's a big shout out to him. He doesn't do any social media or any of that stuff. But we were having a conversation during his last gunfight concepts course that he had up here. And he does a significantly higher round count with handguns than I've seen in a lot of classes. And all of a sudden he started seeing, all these crazy failures out of a couple of handguns, right? There was a guy with a SIG 226, P226. That's a high-end handgun, right? Mm-hmm. Very nice. It's there's currently a controversy around the SIG P320 and like some American SIG products and stuff, and kind of has been for a few years. But this was a made in Germany SIG,
an
older one, wasn't an Exeter, New Hampshire one. That one broke a firing pin in class. Broke a firing pin. Mm-hmm. Did a huge round count behind it and broke a firing pin. Right. So talking about probably $2,000 handgun, broke a firing pin after about
I broke one on a 229. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thing. It happens, right? Gun goes down, dude pulls a Glock out, finishes the class, right? Well, another guy had a Wilson Combat Smith & Wesson M&P. Gun went down. Not Wilson Combat. Sorry, belay that. It was a
custom shop.
Ed Brown.
Okay.
It was Ed Brown. Goes down. The plunger for the striker inside the slide. Some sort of issue with it, right? Wasn't fit properly. I mean, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the M&P platform to say exactly what the mechanism of failure was. But again, you're talking about a very expensive high-end handgun that was plagued with failures. Should it have failed? Everything has a point of failure, right? Should it have failed? Probably not. But it did. And those were two examples within 24 hours of one another, right? Within 24 hours of one another. So, there's a lot of elitism out there. And again, there's a threshold there for what is serviceable versus what we prefer, right? A serviceable weapon is not necessarily something that you want or would, what is optimum. For example, coming from a long-range marksmanship background, I can take a Remington 5R, right? 308. Well, hell, we could even say 6.5 Creedmoor. I don't own one, but we could say this, right? Just rack grade Remington 5R, Remington 700. It's a baseline, bottom line. This is what it takes to be a precision weapon, right? Entry level. Is that necessarily what I want? Is that on the level of my Dave Lauk custom bolt gun that I have? His King rifle. I literally have one. No, it's not the same. All right, and I'm talking about a dichotomy here of two weapons. Remington 5R, which I'm literally talking about a rifle that I have. It's 7.62 by 51. Right, got a 1 in 11.25 right hand twist, 24-inch barrel. Right, set up very similarly to an M24 that I carried once upon a time. Right, with just a 10 by 40 mil dot scope on the top of it, made by SWFA. Is this the preferred Gucci LRM? I'm going to take this to a F-class competition or PRS competition? No, hell no. Is that even a rifle that I'm going to be bragging on shooting out to 1,000? No. We can do so much better than that, right? But will it work for the purpose that I intend it to be? Yeah, 100%. Right? Absolutely. Right. So when we take that idea and apply that to communications, I know where the pitfalls of my equipment is going to be. But more importantly, I also know at the strategic level, the macro level, how I'm organizing people for purpose. And I know what the Taliban did right. And I know what the Taliban did wrong when we fucking shot them. Been there, done that. Mm-hmm. I know what the Iraqi insurgency, al-Naqshbandi, did in 2007. I know what the fuck they did because I was there, right? I know who got shot and who didn't. Turn around 2009. I know what they did right and what they did wrong. So, these guys that are running around talking about they got all this Gucci gear, they're gonna, there's a time and a place for all that. Yeah. I sell gear on my store. But if you'll notice, I'm not running around selling, like, oh, this is my Cry Precision jumpable plate carrier. Dude, I'm not running around. I'm walking into a situation. And let's talk about reality of unconventional warfare here. Like, if I'm walking into a situation with a group of guys armed where I don't already have the upper hand, what the fuck am I doing? I'm pretty sure that's a principle that's taught somewhere, along the line. Somewhere, just kind of.
You just tickled Dick's funny bone because he has ranted about that so many times. I think he's turned blue in the face on the exact same thing you just said. That's why he's chuckling.
Yeah, we can't get folks to recognize that they're planning for the pocket clips like they're going to be running around in some kind of Tom Clancy video game, doing all the things, operating and kicking indoors, and
it ain't what's going to happen.
In a nutshell, they're all going to get dead quick.
I mean, so taking that principle back to communications, like, so that, well, let's talk about contemporary operating environments and what we can learn. So Afghanistan, where we didn't win, by the way, Iraq, we didn't win. Like, and I don't say it, look, for a few of you out there who will probably get offended at that statement, I was there. All right. I was in both those theaters multiple times. And I'll freely admit it. We didn't win. Okay. We didn't win. And guy in the comments, front towards enemy, cried JPCs aren't even that expensive. That's not the fucking point, guy. That's not the point. It's not the fucking point. But whatever, man. You keep Keep at it, buddy. Anyway, point is, it's not about dude. It's not what it's about, man. You're missing the point. Forest through the trees. Here's the deal: we didn't win. We didn't win in Iraq. We didn't win in Afghanistan. We've been in fucking Yemen. We've been in Yemen since at least 2014. At least. We've had shit going on there. All right. You didn't hear about it because it's almost been a media blackout. But we've had shit going on there. Syria. Do we win in Syria? I don't know. What about Ukraine?
If we're winning over there, boy, that seems like a weird way to win.
Tell me, for all the NAFO folks out there, we're gonna push Russia. Have you won back any inch of terrain? No. Russell Wallace in the comments. We didn't win in Liberia. Hell no, we didn't. We didn't win in Somalia. We didn't win in any of these places. Right now, there's a lot of reasons for that. It might be an oversimplification here, but there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of them is that high technology does not beat low technology. It doesn't, or the absence of technology at all. It doesn't beat it, right? It does not. You can create all the enablers you want, but if you don't have the underlying skills in a executable manner, it doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter.
Two superpowers went into Afghanistan, and we being one of them, Russia being the other, and left with our tails and behind our butts.
We did. So in Afghanistan, the famine 8102, Syria's a win if you count all the oil we take. And that's a pretty base statement, brother. I hear you, but I see you. I see you. There's a lot of reasons for that, though. Some of them are political, right? Some of them are political. Some of them are what I chalk up to high technology does not beat low technology, right? Absolutely. Absolutely the case. And no matter how many high tech things that we think that we have, it creates this level of hubris. We think that we can do all these things. There's always a low tech solution out there. Always. It's a thinking man's game, right? Insurgencies, unconventional warfare, whatever you want to call it, it's all a thinking man's game. I have to think, right? And if you can outthink your opponent, doesn't matter. Don't matter how big he is. He's going down, right? They outlasted us. They had some help too, but not a lot, right? This is another thing that the people don't really get. They did not have a lot of help. ISI did play a role in kind of walking both sides of the fence. China kind of gave them a little material support here and there. But generally, the Taliban, aside from the financing of the Haqqani network, through the Haqqani network, they didn't really have a whole lot of support. They don't get along with ISI. The Afghans have a very resentful attitude towards the Pakistani government. Right? They do have their cousins in the Northwest Tribal area. Yeah. Ron Mueller and I had he's a former CIA paramilitary officer. We had a great couple of podcasts sometime back, and I got to get him back on. He spent a lot of time there in Pakistan, and we were talking about that and diving into that. But these were guys that were using cheap technology. They were using proto-Baofengs, essentially. I have sensitive site exploitation photos floating around somewhere on probably some hard drives I shouldn't have. But, whatever. They're there. We rolled these dudes up. This was the equipment they had. I'll tell the world, I don't give a fuck, right? No, this is the equipment they had. And a couple of those photos I'm more than willing to show. This is Chinese chest rig, Baofeng, whatever they were called back then. A couple of AK mags, because this dude is, and I'm not saying that's like the epitome of combat prowess or whatever. This is stuff that he can ditch if he needs to, and he can go back and get later. And if he can't go back and get it later, well, then he could find more of it in his working environment. But he can ditch that stuff, so he goes right back to being, hey, I'm just a dude working my poppy fields over here. I ain't seen nothing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like they're not sitting there fighting these pitched battles against the foe. They know that shit's suicidal, man. Unless they know that they can win, right? Unless you know that you can already win, you outlast your opponent. So that's a whole other thing. So, somebody say you cannot buy base competence at organizational level. Money will never win. Yeah, I agree with that statement. You have to have the underlying skills and the motivation. That's good stuff. But applying this to communications, right? So let's talk about this on the communications front. These guys had, when I was there, they were relying on repeaters. This is a story that I tell in the SIGINT courses, by the way. They were relying on essentially ammo can repeaters to communicate via analog voice. All right. Like this is too easy. We got them. Although it's not as easy as you would think. But we got these guys. We're just going to record them endlessly. All right. So that begs the question, like signals intelligence, which I happen to know a guy that wrote a book on it. #1 bestseller.
Links in the description, by the way.
Yeah. Point is though, is that, all right, so let's say you got your SDR, or you get your fucking scanner, or, spectrum analyzer, like you've got all the technology. All right, cool. Well, that satisfies the find, right, of F3EA. If you don't know what F3EA is, find, fix, finish, exploit, assess. And then there's disseminate at the end of that, right, which, kind of definitely applies, but we need to focus on F3EA. If you can get that right, then the rest is good. Teach this in the SIGINT course too, by the way. But F3EA, all right, find. You all right, so you got the gear, that's cool. You're establishing find. Now you have to fix. So you in place surveillance, because that's what fix is. I in place surveillance. Then I try to listen to you, and then there's all sorts of things that I have to establish, like patterns of life. And if you don't know what that is, don't know what patterns of life are, and you don't know how these things can be used against you, you don't know shit about SIGINT. Get out of my face. I wrote a book on it. Go read that, reference it, then come back with your questions. All right. I worked with all the guys that did this. I have some on my team now, right? Madman Actual is one of them. This was his entire job. So, point is, though, is that you have to create those patterns of life. You have to establish all those. You have to listen for those. That takes time. You have to develop that. Well, we had this genius thing that we decided to do, right? Some West Pointer came up with, because they always have the most brilliant ideas. Well, we're going to blow up all the repeaters. Because if we blow up all the repeaters, then the Taliban won't be able to communicate. They won't be able to communicate, and then we can just isolate all the individual cells. They'll be disorganized, and we can just win the global war on terror, right? Right? Yeah. Yeah, except that isn't what happened.
Right.
Take care to guess what happened? They fucking started talking to each other, peer to peer, and now all of a sudden you had guys that were on a couple of collective frequencies. It was very easy to intercept. And now all of a sudden you created little transmitters, pockets of transmitters everywhere.
Right.
That are talking on all these different frequencies. And meanwhile, what you can say, it's your little airsoft game or whatever bullshit it is that you're doing, where you're never going beyond a couple of acres. You didn't do the movement into a place either. So you didn't get the 5 hours of a ruck march to get into wherever it is that you're going. It's slow and fucking crippling, and 6-pound rifle turns into a fucking cinder block with a 4x4 attached to it. All right. So then now all of a sudden, right, these guys went to a bunch of frequencies. We couldn't, despite, all of the technological advantage we have. We've got ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance drones in the sky. We've got all the high-tech stuff. They're throwing all the money at it. You get the birds, the Goonie birds that are up there. Spooky birds are scooping up all the RF that's out there. We still have to sit back and analyze that stuff and sift the wheat from the chaff, right? And if these guys are using a bunch of local slang and terms that we just don't know what the hell they're talking about, that's too much shit to have to sift to try and figure out what the residual, noise floor is, because it's too high, right? The whole thing is too high. So there's a lesson in there. All right, there's a lesson inherent to that. Don't centralize your communications. Don't hang your hat on we're always going to do this one thing. A PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. All right. If you can do that and you create those on the fly, this is something that we do in class. One of the first things that we do in the RTO course is cover creating an SOI, and you change them for every operation, meaning you never use the same frequency twice, just like Colonel, need to go haze myself in a minute. Major Robert Rogers said back in 1759, never take the same route twice. I believe that's on a well-known document that he wrote. It's Rules of Ranging. Ringing some bells. You never use the same frequency twice. Definitely not twice on one operation. Say what you got to say and shut the fuck up. Cut it off. Noise and light discipline includes RF emissions. Right? That's all you got to do. And then we're doing hand and arm signals. And I'm not running in and clearing any fucking buildings or doing any stupid shit. Right? This is what these guys did, and it worked. This is what they're doing in Yemen, and it works. Guess what? In Ukraine, I'm gonna dispel a myth right here about Ukraine and the invasion of Russia into eastern Ukraine, Burisma land. So much ado was made about how the Russian invading forces at the time were using Baofeng UV-82s, which are the worst of all Baofengs, by the way, for a lot of reasons. They just stay away from them. They're not good radios. Much was made of that. There was, the NAFO crowd was saying all sorts of stuff. There were, the quote unquote, my radio research group guy on Reddit was saying, they don't have technology. They don't. Wrong. No. So in 2014, Donbass kicked off, right? That was actually the beginning of the Ukrainian war, right? This was the beginning of it. This is where it all began. The Ukrainian side was utilizing, first they were all using analog, and I've got a piece up on brushbeater.org. Back in the day, I think it went up in 2016, where it was called Piss Off the Comms, We're at War. And it was a Ukrainian guy talking about and it was translated from Ukrainian. It was all in Cyrillic, and I spent many hours translating it on Google Translate because I don't speak Ukrainian and I can't read Cyrillic. But it was, basically a entire essay on this is the shit we were doing, utilizing Baofengs, and this is where it got fucked up, because they were trying to use it as a do all the things tactical radio and create an ad hoc network. Well, they had all sorts of ComSec problems in there, and that's because they were utilizing it in a way that it really isn't good for that role. So they switched to DMR, digital mobile radio. TYT radios to be specific. There was a lot of MD380s that were being fielded, and the Russians realized this. So there's a lesson to be recognized. They did it for ComSec reasons. It worked pretty well for a little while until the truce. The Russians went back knowing that they were going to invade, and they diverted a significant amount of electronic warfare effort to developing that capability, the exploitation capability, right? So knowing that your adversary is using DMR, digital mobile radio, which is a specific protocol, by the way, in doing that, the Russians realized that if they were going to target conventional forces based on their EF emissions, or RF emissions rather, right? Their radio frequency emissions, if they detect a DMR signal, which looks very different on a spectrum analyzer, looks very, very different than an analog signal, you can target those with artillery once you get a firing solution on them, which is exactly what they did. It's what they continue to do. They knew that there were ComSec failures. They knew that analog radio is really not what you want in a conventional war, but they went forward with it. And here's why. Here's the other part of that. The AZART radio system. The AZART radio system is the Russian it's the Russian counterpart to the Shadowcat, which is supposed to be the next generation of the Harris 152 and the Singar system. This is gonna supposedly this is gonna replace all of it. We'll see. I don't think it will. Has a lot of problems with it, and Manet is part of that. Andrew Zicki, how about some applicable info? I'm dropping some here. You know, why don't you? You just want something for free. Thought, I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna learn some lessons. Well, I am teaching some lessons in unconventional warfare. So anyhow, the AZART system utilizes a digital protocol that is very similar to DMR. And so when you have two groups that are fighting one another in close proximity, right? Danger close proximity, 600 to 1,000 meters apart, right? In most cases, you have the risk of fratricide there, right? You might drop rounds on your own guys. You want to, that's going to inevitably happen in a force on force situation, right? It just does. I mean, it's going to. All right. Point is that you don't want your electronic warfare guys who are tied in with the firing solutions, with your artillery batteries. You don't want them when they're tired, they're stressed out, they're looking at a screen for, hours upon hours, shifts are long, right? There's a lot of confusion that could happen there. So if you know everybody's analog on one side, the enemy's all digital, right? You got them. And that's what they've been doing, and they've continued to do that. They've utilized the strategy back and forth. So, there you go. So in an unconventional warfare environment, returning to that, the Yemenis know this, right? They recognize this. Why is it that in a country that the terrain, the topography is similar to Afghanistan, but it has all the advantages Afghanistan didn't have for an enemy force coming in, right? They got all this coastline there, right? It's surrounded by coastline. It's the tail end of a peninsula. Why is it that they've been able to stymie conventional forces, right? Why have they been able to stymie Western forces? The reason why is they're going analog, they're going old school. And we see that. And so if you're creating a competent SOI, right, where you're also bursting transmissions out, right, you're only transmitting at certain times, comma windows. Well, there you go. That's how you do it. And it's a patient man's game. So, anyway, there's a lot of lessons to be learned in there, and I throw those into the books. There's real world examples. There is examples that you can literally read and say, oh shit, look that up. Bam, it happened. Oh, there it is. There's white papers that are on it that are written by people that have more bona fides than just social media. That they actually do this for a living. And there is in a format, the Gross Guide to Signals Intelligence is also written in a format that you can take, digest, you can use common off-the-shelf equipment to create that exploitation capability. But more important, in the first couple of chapters, it's talking about the actual process of intelligence. How do you do that? How do you foment intelligence? What is intelligence, right? It's not sharing news stories. That doesn't compute. This is how you actually build a fucking product that's relevant, that's competent, and more importantly, is exploitable. This is how you do it.
You know,
Yeah,
I
a lot of people.
want to touch on a point that you made,
Sure.
and I think one example of, you know, you go into an area and you use what you have, and then you don't try and instill, like, the American Army is very technologically advanced. So what do we
Right.
do? And correct me if I'm wrong here, but what we do, we went into Afghanistan and we tried to make them technologically advanced where they were not capable of doing it. I mean, we had contractors in there running high-speed equipment, so forth and so on, but yet realistically, and the enemy that they were going to fight, i.e. the Taliban that came back in, all right, would have been just regular conventional infantry ground tactics. But yet we got so, you know, you got to be like the United States and blah, blah, blah. And that's not what they needed, and they weren't capable of doing it.
Right.
You know, you got to know your environment.
Right.
So.
Right. And I would say the technological level of superiority was very much our undoing. I have several examples I can think of commanders that just couldn't think past their equipment. And there was a lot of reasons for that, I think. I can think of a striker commander specifically that he literally couldn't think outside of the vehicles. Like everything with this guy revolved around vehicles. And, you know, it's just like, hey, listen, sir, like we're utilizing you as an insertion platform. We are utilizing your scout element as support for us for something that we had going on. You know, you got to think past these vehicles.
Yeah.
Like this isn't strikers have a very serious, like, unique signature to them. You know, but we're a striker unit. This is how we operate. It was just like,
Right.
yeah,
couldn't get out of that
you're
box.
not getting it. No, yeah, it was like you're not getting it, man. Like you're supposed to be the supporting element, and we want your guys to do some cool shit because they want to do some cool shit. So, you know, and we can use them. So let's do it the right way. But it's like that with anything. You know, when you get a shiny new toy, you want to go play with it, you want to use it, and then all of a sudden you run into, you know, well, now I got to fit these scenarios to make it work. You know, that doesn't necessarily work in every case. And when it comes to communications, you're better off knowing the vulnerabilities and the potential points of exploitation of your equipment that you're using, and know what they all are, right? Know what they all are. Right. How is it going to be exploited? It's just like the human intelligence question. How might you be exploited? You know, what's the exploitation value behind you? And then you understand, all right, well, this is what my attack surface is. Now, how might they come after me? Right? How might somebody come after me? What are they going to target? Yep. And when you know that, then you can button up. You know, it's the same with communication. Same with any of the domains of intelligence: human intelligence, signals intelligence, imagery intelligence. You know, all source coming together. Right? It's again, you know, and those principles apply to everything. I mean, it's just like the you know, what are the 5 principles of patrolling? Planning, recon, security, control, and common sense. And as I teach in the scout course and in the recce course, if you violate any one of those, it doesn't matter what the whatever your execution paragraph says you're going to go do, right? And this is how we're going to do it, right? We deviate from it. All right, cool. But if you know from the mission paragraph what I'm setting out to go do, I know what I need to accomplish, then when it goes to shit, you can still do it. And if you violate one of the 5 principles of patrolling, most often common sense is one getting violated. Yeah, you step back and say, man, you know, like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, maybe taking this natural
If it
line
don't
of
make
drift right here is kind of a bad idea because
Yeah.
we're walking
Yeah.
right into an L-shaped ambush. You know,
Yeah.
if it don't make a lot of sense, maybe we ought not to do it.
maybe.
And
my
you know,
Maybe,
opinion.
just maybe.
talking about being able to change, you know, your mission and adapt to what's going on. I've always heard this little story where this company commander, you know, he's got his company there, and he's going to attack this defensive position on the hill. They go up, they don't do a very good job. Everybody gets eliminated except for the radio man. The radio man then looks around, says we still got to take the hill, calls in an airstrike, and they win. And he's a lone survivor. You know, you got to be flexible with that mission statement or what you're going to do and be able to react to what you plan to do. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing about, you know, though I may be the lone survivor, you know, that's why it's in the Ranger Creed. You have to understand what your mission is here, so that I know how to accomplish it.
Yeah,
But you also know what are the points of exploitation. What are they on this piece of equipment? And so if you know you're of the mindset of, you know, well, I'm just going to throw money at a problem, or I'm just going to grab this thing that I think checks all the boxes. All right, but maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
And you know, and you find that a lot. So, you know, baseline communications kit, quote unquote. Like, all right, how are we going to equip ourselves for, you know, uncertain times or whatever? Like all that's on the menu, boys. You know, that's going to happen. 2024 is going to be a fucking shit show. Like, if you don't think that it will, I mean, we got people of literally all the rogue nations that hate America coming across the southern border. Like,
the nations are
got
here.
them all.
You know,
they're here already.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you got them shutting down all the airports. They're shutting down LaGuardia. They're shutting down JFK. Shutting down O'Hare. They're shutting down fucking LAX. Dude, you know, you don't think that the house is on fire? It's like a guy the other day. Oh, this isn't that big of a deal. And he lives in Texas. And I'm like, you dumbass. I mean, how fucking stupid.
That's those people that, unless it's literally knocking on their door and standing in their front yard, they don't think it's going on.
They're not going to make it, man. These guys are not going to make it.
No.
They're not going to make it.
The same ones aren't going to make it that I see. And again, as you've said, there's nothing wrong with having better, higher end, nicer equipment. Yeah. The problem I see with a lot of those guys is they think that with their expensive encrypted radios, that they're going to take those encrypted radios and they're going to use it like this in bad times.
Yeah,
because
they don't
relying on that expensive encrypted radio to hide them, and they don't want that unsecure little analog, piece of crap, because then they can't just talk on it.
Yeah.
So they're not. So I want to be specific on something here, very specific, so it doesn't get cherry picked. You can absolutely encrypt bow things, and yeah, you damn sure ought to be, right? In the book, I cover how to create data bursts, right? How are you bursting data? So I said something earlier in this podcast about got the radio on, transmit the fuck you got to transmit, you shut it off, shut the fuck up, all right? It's literally that fast. You create this thing called a comma window. So in LERS companies, you have an RTO, radio telephone operator, who's carrying a 117, which is a Harris on his back, right? And every 12 hours when you're on a mission, you have a comma window that comes up, right? And I was joking about this with Ian Burlingame, who's a 18 Echo. Clay Martin, he's a friend of Clay Martin's. I've done several podcasts with him. With Clay too, and I know everybody's familiar with Clay. Burlingame's one of the smartest people that I've ever talked to. I mean, he's an absolute genius. His books are great too. The Eternal War on Amazon, really, really good thing. But he was an 18 Echo, and he was talking about max gain, which is their final exercise in 18 Echo school, right? So they got a 48-hour movement, which is grueling in and of itself. You got a 48-hour movement where you got to make a commo check-in. So your commo window is literally every hour. And you're bursting out that data. All right, so this is a final exercise of doing this. This is, this is all part of it. All right. And we were joking about that, like, man, but that's all part of it. It's reinforcing the fact that you get used to bursting out that data on a plan, right? Quote unquote pre-planning. I don't just fly by the seat of my pants. I'll just be like, hey guys, we're gonna go fucking run in this building. Blah. Like, no. There's an actual plan at work. I mean, you have to come up with some sort of strategy. There has to be a tangible objective to why you're doing whatever the hell it is you're going to do. Right? So anyway, communications is part of that and coordinating that. And I explained this in the Guerrilla's Guide to the Battlefield Radio. Define it as clandestine communications. That's what this is. It's clandestine communication, and you're encrypting it. There's a number of ways of doing that. And no, digital encoding is not encryption. Right? They're two different things, not the same thing, not the same animal. Can you take digital encoding and make it encryption? Yes. But there's a degree of separation there, right? And I cover that in the book. So there's also two broad types of encryption. There's digital and there's physical. Digital encryption is relying on something somebody else made and put into your radio as part of the whole programming process of it and how it operates to rely to create and you rely on that built-in encryption. But you don't necessarily know where the holes in it are. And those guys that are telling you that, I tested it and I know that, you don't know shit. Because I promise you, if you did know, you'd be working for one of the labs that creates it. And before you even walk in those, you need a clearance and you're signing an NDA. Ask me how I know. All right. So that's the way that works. You're talking about physical encryption. That is when you are actually encrypting the content of the message itself. You're doing it. This is where trigrams come in. This is where a one-time pad comes in. Oh, that takes time for me to do that. I don't die. Yeah, dude, again, goes back to planning. Goes back to who are you communicating with and for what purpose. Right? You got to understand what all this stuff is. Now that's way overkill. If somebody is just trying to look, I don't really care about any of that. I'm not really into the whole UW thing. I just want to know how to communicate when the world has gone sideways, whatever. All right, fine. The same baseline still applies. Okay, this is how you do this. This is the methodology by which we operate. All right, so that's how that works. And again, it's all covered. Guerrilla's Guide to Battlefield Radio's got it in depth, in detail, how to do every one of those things. It's in there if you actually read the book. If you buy it and just put it on the shelf, well, I don't know what to tell you. I damn sure ain't gonna tell you how to use your radio via an email.
I was just fixing to ask you. We can't email you and just get an in-depth directional tutorial. Because you've got so much free time to do such things.
I do. It's tons of free time.
It's led to believe.
It's. I mean, I got mountains of work to do here. I got Post-it notes. All these Post-it notes. These are all Post-it notes of tasks that I have to do after this podcast. So this is how I operate.
At least with the book, I mean, if they don't do anything else, at least learn how to come up with brevity codes and use those. Something.
Or better yet, man, local slang. So here's a SIGINT lesson that the Russians learned, ironically enough, from Chechnya. And Lieutenant Colonel Lester Grau, who did an academic partnership at Ryazan Military Academy, which was is Russia's counterpart to West Point. He did a academic internship there, wrote a number of white papers based on their experience in Afghanistan. That became The Bear Went Over the Mountain.
Yeah, right.
And then he also covered the other side of the mountain. My copy of The Other Side of the Mountain is right here. And in Kandahar City, they sell those alongside Qurans. So in a country where people can barely read anything, definitely can't read English, they're selling this book right beside the Quran. That should tell you how much reverence they have for that culturally, because they beat the Soviets, right? I'm sure there'll be an American version that'll be out before too long. The Taliban's make bank off of it. But anyway, any entrepreneuring writers out there, there you go. There's your $1 million idea, right? Can't copy the Bao thing. That's mine. But anyway, point is though is that Colonel Grau wrote a white paper on communications failures in Chechnya. That SIGINT failures specifically. There were several white papers that he wrote. Some of them went into a book by Dodge Billingsley called Fangs of the Lone Wolf. It may not be in print anymore. I got it well over a decade ago. Strongly encourage you to get that book. There's a lot of lessons on communications in there, by the way, including urban sniping, rural sniping. There's a lot of that. And the Chechens didn't really win, but they didn't really lose either. They're still technically an autonomous state. It was kind of a messy political situation with them. Anyway, some people say I look like the president of Chechnya. So like that's more than just a joke. Joe, I know you're in the comments. It's more than now a lot of other people know too. I kind of do look like Kadyrov a little bit, especially when I grow my hair out a little bit longer. I'll look like him. But well, my ancestors literally do come from that part of the world, so that's we are that's genetically.
Dad explains to do things.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. The point about the communications though is that they literally used nothing but local lingo, and the Russian SIGINT guys that were assigned to Chechnya and the conventional forces, and of course the Spetsnaz as well on the unconventional warfare side, or soft side, special operations side, as we would say in America. They couldn't get anything from the radio traffic because there was so much. What the Chechens did, they had a lot of support from the Islamic community in the United States. There's a lesson there too, right? Mm-hmm. External support outside of the targeted area of operations. You got to have it. You have to have it. It's not a question, right? You have to have it. And in that case, it wasn't nation state backed. The United States didn't formally back the Chechens, but I can tell you for a fact, based on another book that I have over here called My Jihad by Akai Collins. Another excellent book. I don't know if it's still in print. I've got like a dozen copies of it because I think it's a very fascinating look at this whole guerrilla warfare thing, like how it works in the real world. There's all sorts of lessons in there, from proper gear selection, like boots. Akai had a pair of Danner boots that he took to Chechnya, and these other guys, it was a group of Arabs that he went into Chechnya from Azerbaijan with, made his way, up and across the border. And these guys weren't wearing quality boots, and they were just sucking the entire time. He's good to go because he's got quality boots. We all know this stuff, but how many people don't? It's not necessarily like these are just the boots that are the most comfy. It's the ones that are going to actually last the longest period of time. It can be recrafted, and not a pair of throwaway tennis shoe boots. Like that's not. Anyway, talking about radio, right? The Chechens had a lot of external support in the United States that was sending them equipment by way of Azerbaijan, right? It was coming into Azerbaijan and Georgia as well. There were a lot of Georgians that were supporting the Chechen effort, and the United States looked the other way on it. They didn't, okay, well, I guess they just snuck all those radios out of the United States. I don't know, right? Well, they got their hands specifically. They really liked Kenwoods, and that's interesting because there was several groups of Chechens that went to go fight for Ukraine, and they were still referencing. They were calling Baofengs, by the way, in the early days of the Ukrainian war. They were calling them Kenvods, because and that owes to the fact that they had this high reverence for Kenwood handhelds. What they did was they handed them out to all of the villagers, like literally all of them, knowing that all these people were going to be talking nonstop. Got them off their phones, right? They, if those villages had phones, they're talking about the mid 90s here. They had landlines. Get them off that, because all those landlines are tapped, right? Every one of those are tapped. They want to know. The Russians got all of that already. It's a whole lot like cell phones these days, right? Same thing. They got the infrastructure. If you don't own the infrastructure, you don't control it. Period. End of story. Zero debate. And you don't understand it. You don't know how it works. You don't have any input or control, any mechanism of control over it. Period. End of story. Right? This is not a debate. So they handed out all these radios, little simple VHF. They were 2 meter, meaning 144 to 148 megahertz radios, right? That's amateur radio, 2 meter VHF. They handed these out. You're talking about a 4 megahertz wide space that they occupied, compared to 136 to 174 in a Baofeng, which is much larger spread of space. And they just talked nonstop. When the real messages were being passed, and everybody was in on this, right? Everybody was in on it. So again, what was the exploitation value? The Chechens were very successful on the human intelligence and the signals intelligence side, especially in the first Chechen war that was going on in the mid 90s. By 2000, it started to fall apart, and it started to go sideways. Rocklick Ranch using simplex. Yep, absolutely. They're using simplex, just local lingo, local slang. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the volume of traffic was so high, the what we would call the residual noise floor was so high. What are you getting? I mean, what are you getting at that point? You're not getting anything.
Can't sort through it.
And so there's you can't do anything with that.
Right.
That was why they took that approach. So adventurous guide to the galaxy, clouding up the space, 100%. That is exactly what you're doing. That's the strategy. You're just flooding an entire area, and then you got nothing. So you got to rely on other means, and that's why in the first Chechen war, the Russians, when they came in, and I know if some of you out there are like, man, what does this have to do with the United States? Because there ain't going to be any collapse like, oh man, all of a sudden fucking Washington D.C. is gone and I can run around and do whatever I want and I become the fucking local warlord of whatever. Well, I hope you studied up on what a sweat MC is, or you ain't gonna live very long. That's just that. And if you don't know what that is, well, then you failed the first test of being a warlord. So anyway, free advice. So anyway, Andrew, that was down in the comments making some snide comments. You want to be a warlord, homie? You ain't gonna make it. I'm just saying. So anyway, just had to fire back at him. He was way down in there. I just had to fire back at him real quick. Anyway, Sweat MC. So Sweat MC, Mike Charlie. Go look it up. Look at what it is. I wrote some pieces on it way back when. That's what you have to have. Anyway, there's not going to be some magic collapse where all of a sudden, like, oh, it doesn't work any, like the DC isn't there, and I could just run around and do whatever I want. No. When you're talking about like all right, we've moved into a situation in the United States where they're pushing for a constitutional crisis, right? I don't care what you think about Trump or like what fucking Republican you're going to vote for or not vote for. I don't care. All right. I mean, I care about me and, but this is the path we're on. I'm just pointing out where we are. Okay. What is going to happen is you have competing economic powers that are now galvanizing their sides, and this is being propagandized. Okay. This is being and the United States, quote unquote, and the ruling hegemony of the United States has one economic interest at heart, and there is a counter narrative and counter interest that is quickly being fomented in response to it. All right, that's the way civil wars start, and it's going to force a constitutional crisis, which is going to force a conversation on secession. That's the way that's going to go. And secession doesn't just happen in a vacuum. There has to actually be economic incentive for that to happen. And so that's how this is going to begin to foment. Well, that's literally what was happening in Chechnya on a smaller scale, somewhat smaller scale, right? The same thing happened. And so the Russians in 1992, you have the dissolution of the Soviet Union. By 1993, they looked very weak. You've got Boris Yeltsin, who was a weak leader to the Russian people. And now all of a sudden, Chechnya, who are originally the Chechen forces that stood themselves up, right? They were the Chechen defensive militias. And then they grew from there. These guys were veterans of Afghanistan. A lot of them had been originally they were part of the Soviet conscript army. Then they, in the Russian system, you have your conscription period, and then you're allowed to join the professional army. That's the way it works. And so with that said, a lot of these guys were already predisposed to being pretty hard fighters. You're talking about a culture that doesn't drink alcohol. You have a lot of rampant alcoholism through parts of Russia. So you've got a good populace already that is physically hardy, used to hard work. They have a warrior culture. The Chechens already, they have an underlying warrior culture. Look at the UFC. Perfect example. Khabib. They video of him when he was 7 wrestling a bear cub. Wrestling is their national sport in that part of the world. So they naturally made their way into Spetsnaz and in different roles of Soviet military leadership because they're competent and they're very intelligent. And, cream floats, cream rises to the top. So all of a sudden, you've got a disproportionate number of very well-organized veterans who their war was recent. It was very recent for them. It was less than a decade. Then they literally walked out of Afghanistan, walked north out of Afghanistan, right, with the Russian 40th Army, Soviet 40th Army. That was how they left. It wasn't any airlifts where people was falling off the aircraft and all that shit. Nope. It was organized. They left. They drove out. And the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, the communist government of Afghanistan, lasted for 4 more years after that compared to the American attempt at building something similar. So a lot of lessons there. Point is that these guys had enough. The Chechens had tried to break away culturally a few times in the past. There was a guy named Imam Shamil in the 1850s who led the big revolt against the Tsarist government of Russia, and it was put down. But they look at him very much as a cultural founding father, right? And so they had it all. They had the culture, the underlying culture, which they still have. They had the galvanization effect. There was an economic collapse, right, that caused the fracturing of the Soviet Union. So you have the dissolution of that. The Russian economy was in shambles. They decided to go their own way. Does this ring any bells of maybe the situation that we're looking at in the United States? They looked at it like, well, we're incompatible peoples. We're there, folks. I mean, realize this. We're there. And so at that point, now they began to take their organizational experience, their combat experience, and they created a very competent training program. They had outside help that was coming from their support structure, first in Georgia and Azerbaijan, then Saudi Arabia, then there were elements in Jordan. Of course, a lot of this was coming from the United States. And again, it was all well documented in Collins's book, My Jihad, because that's how he got into Chechnya. And, he talks about how he became an FBI informant. And, it's just a really fascinating look for somebody who has, doesn't know how all these things work and is very interested in that. In my opinion, that is one of the two. There are two books that are must have. You must read these books as references. My Jihad is one of them. The other one is Agent Storm. Right, Agent Storm is about another guy, similar story, but he's from Denmark. Morton Storm. Morton Storm is still alive, by the way, and he, in fact, we were talking about Yemen. He, in fact, was the guy who penetrated Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which was based in Yemen. He's the guy that penetrated that. He's the guy that got in there. He's the guy that fingered several of the HVIs of Al Qaeda that was operating there and got him schwacked. So his story, and he's very similar to Akai Collins or Akil Collins. He's kind of went by both names. Grew up rough, and this is another lesson for guys. There was somebody on Twitter that was talking about, because there's always these conversations talking about, how you start a quote unquote militia or like whatever it is. All right, first things first, man, you got to recruit the right kind of people. All right, so this is one of those unconventional, kind of maybe not pleasant conversations. I'm not going out recruiting fucking accountants and, well-to-do people that can afford Gucci gear generally. No, that's not who you're recruiting. You look at gangs like MS-13, which count for an unconventional force, I would say. They fit the definition of that. You look at CNJG. You look at the Zetas when they were at that height. You look at any of the cartels, right? Any of those, because it's present in a lot of people's minds. What's their recruitment process? Who are they recruiting? They're recruiting people who are already comfortable with violence. Look at the gangs, right? Look at gangs in the United States. I mean, take your pick. Street gangs, 1% or biker gangs. Who are they recruiting? You're recruiting people that you already know. You got something on them. You got dirt on them. They got really, I hate to say it this way, but they ain't got a lot else going for them, right? Those are the people you recruit. They're rough. Go back to and people don't like that. Like that. Oh man, that's you go back to the Patriot, right? We all remember the Patriot. Mel Gibson movie. You go back, you watch that. You watch the beginning, where it's like, all right, Mel Gibson and the one dude who killed himself. Spoiler alert if you're the one guy that's never seen the film, but that was kind of like his first sergeant. They had went and butchered all the French at Fort Wilderness or whatever it was, like previous to that. But this was a guy, and that dude was rough as shit. Like that guy. Okay, this is my NCOIC. We went and we friggin' slayed the fucking French together in the French and Indian Wars. I know this dude is down to fight. This is my guy. All right, so they walk in there. They walk into the tavern, and they're like, are we in the right kind of place? I mean, walk in the tavern because these dudes are rough, man. The
key was when his son said, "I'm not sure this is the kind of sort we want," And he goes, no,
Yes.
they're exactly the sort we want.
That's exactly what you want. You want these that are rough around the edges, man. Like not to the degree that they're unhinged, because there's a fine line to be observed. And it's like this too, man. If you look at, well, I would say if you used to look at any combat arms unit, combat arms, specifically the infantry, right? And it doesn't matter like Army or Marine Corps, you're going to see the same personality types in both. You can tell from the outside. My late father-in-law told me this as a joke one time. You can see from the outside of that unit what kind of unit it is before you ever see the guide on. He said, because he was a retired senior NCO. He said, you know how? And I was, I'm drinking beers with him and, just soaking up whatever knowledge he could spit out. And I said, how's that? He goes, do they have trucks or leased luxury vehicles? Because if you see trucks, you see jacked up trucks, that's a combat arms unit. Those boys are rough, right? Support units, not so much. I'm not putting anybody down. That's a reality. I see Knowles nodding his head. That's a reality. Like
most of the combat arms are made up of country boys.
Yeah. It's the way it is. I mean, when you look at Rangerback, you look at SF, look at very, and there's some variability in there, but generally speaking, that's what you get. That's what you're recruiting. Those are the guys that were volunteering for all that, but that's also why this was something that I had a first sergeant tell me when I was a brand new NCO, almost brand new. So every day you have to prove your value to your men. Every single day. You have to run harder than them. You got to lift harder than them. You got to do more pull-ups than them. You got to, you have to. You have to do that. Why? Because that's how you maintain that physical dominance. Like, I'm in charge. This is why I'm in charge. That's the way it's got to be. That's why, whenever you have a change of command, you get a new commander in there, you get, change of responsibility, you get a new first sergeant, new sergeant major. What does he do? What's the very first thing at 06 that he's going to do? You're going on a run.
Mm-hmm.
You're going on a fucking run.
And it's probably going to be a smoker so that everybody knows who he is.
Yep. Yeah. That's but when they do that, he's serious. This guy's serious. And now you got to measure up to him. You have to measure up to him. Yeah. You prove why you're in charge, right? And you do that, and not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like you. But anyway, point behind that is, though, we're talking about Chechnya. You look at the United States, kind of the route that we're on. We're very, I would say we're entering a very dangerous period where we have incompatible peoples. We have two very different visions, competing visions of what the United States should be economically, socially, and we're not a cohesive culture any longer. And I don't foresee, in kind of looking at my background in sociology, I don't foresee that we're going to repair that. They attempted to do this. This is known as a superordinate goal, by the way. 9/11 is the best example of a superordinate goal I can think of, because we came out of the 2000 election. The country was what we thought was the most fractured ever. Gore versus Bush and all this stuff, right? Then 9/11 happens, and all of a sudden everybody cast all that aside. All of a sudden, oh man, we're not frenemies anymore. We're all together, and we're gonna go kick the shit out of these cave dwelling desert people, man. And everybody got behind that, at least for a little while. The divisions were still there, But for a little while, we calmed that down. That's called a superordinate goal. When you have an external conflict that threatens the whole body social, you know, everybody galvanizes together towards that goal. In the military, we do that in basic training. The first week or so of basic training, you take your recruits out to an obstacle course, or at least they used to do. I don't know what they do anymore, but you go out to a little obstacle course where you have obstacles that you have to cross and accomplish as a team, right? Like, you know, you have 3 2x4s, but you've got to cross 5 telephone poles that are stuck in the ground or something like that. Like, you know, it's things that you have to actually work together to accomplish these goals. You know, sanding, you know, on the 4x4s, it's things like that. You put people together. Well, America during the Biden administration attempted to do several superordinate goals. That was part of the whole propaganda machine behind Ukraine, was creating a superordinate goal. It didn't work. Social media definitely was part of the reason it didn't work, is speaking straight sociologically, but the propaganda machine just didn't work. So it didn't pan out. Nobody's getting mine, and that's why they use the language. By the way, for anybody that's wondering about this, why they use the language "our democracy," quote unquote. Right, this is actually a ploy to try and create a superordinate goal. But now what they've realized is that they're not able to target the entirety of the American populace. So once that happens, you begin to other your political enemies. Well, you're not with us. You're with the terrorists. Right? Didn't Bush say that? You ain't with us. You're with the terrorists. That's the language that we're seeing coming out of DC. That's the reason that we have the propaganda we have with the Civil War video movie, whatever the fuck it is. The guy, the weird dude with red glasses, whatever. This is why you're seeing there's going to be other Netflix series coming out. One of them stars Robert De Niro. I'm not at liberty to discuss all the plot details about it, but it will center around communications, and it will center around the bad guys using a certain book. So that's why I'm not at liberty to talk about it. But that movie is very much predictive programming, or this Netflix miniseries is very much predictive programming as well. And you know, again, it should come out sometime next year. I don't know, but anyway, the whole, in a nutshell, they're telling us, you know, you're the other. And why are they using Netflix, by the way? Because Netflix is the most liberal and controlled of all of them. I mean, the government's got the massive amount of power behind it. Assassin of the Gray saying our democracy really means our power. Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely does. It's you know. And then another really good question right above that. Well, here we are. How much of the cohesion and super working goal failure can be attributed to OP4 psyops? You mean the superordinate goal failure? If by OP4 you mean, you know, guys like me, paleo conservatives on the right, alt right, I guess you could say, if that was even really still a thing. I'm not so sure it is. Dudes sharing Pepe memes and stuff. I mean, that's absolutely part of it. It's definitely become the counterculture. The paleo conservative right has very much become the counterculture, and that scares the machine. That certainly scares them. So it's a really good question. How much influence does China have in the United States? That would be another direction I would look, and that's kind of the third wheel of this, because they, you know, the left and the power establishment in Washington D.C. has talked about Russia collusion and Russia this, Russia that, and the reality is it's a lot of it's Chinese. China wields a huge amount of influence over a broad swath of what you see and consume in the United States, and they have a vested interest in breaking us up as well. Um, they're not necessarily friends with the United States government, so they can just continue where they want. Um, they have a vested interest in the United States splitting. Um, Princess Elf, I've seen you ask this question a few times. Why do the Chinese hate us? It's that's a really good question. Ian Burlingame has a great take on this too. And and again, please go back and listen to those podcasts. You can find them on Podbean or Spotify or iTunes or whatever. Just search Ian Burlingame Radio Contra and you'll find it. The United States and the West, to a much larger degree, the West has had a long history of involvement in Chinese affairs. And so, specifically, the Manchurians, who are the ruling elite of the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese Civil War was very much a war between, or the Chinese Communist Revolution was very much a fight between the Manchurian and the Han. And when you see Taiwan and to a lesser degree Hong Kong were the Han, and that's where they ended up going. This is still going on, and China wants a large stake in the world economy, and that's what they're looking for. And they know in order to accomplish that, they need the United States gone. They don't necessarily need us like eliminated, wiped off the map, whatever. No, because they need our resources. So I don't think like a nuclear exchange or something of that nature would occur on part of China. But they do have a vested interest in reducing the United States' power and stake in the world. So how do you do that?
They want
All right, go ahead.
they want to be a regional power, and they just need it so that we can't exert influence in that region.
They want our buying
Yeah.
power.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's why with a secession government, the other thing to be concerned about the quote unquote secession, because there's a lot of conversation about that now. I think a lot of it's very unrealistic, but that's another it's not going to happen without an economic problem that is on the table, and we're headed towards that too. But anyhow, so in Log Cabin School and Comments, I'm going to get to you in a second, brother. You brought up a good point too. They want us reduced in a world stake. They have a lot of other entities that have been targeted by weaponized sanctions, and that's really hurt the United States' long-term credibility in the world. If you think about it, American culture, United States culture inside the United States, see the world in terms of this very, very filtered view that's based on largely on our entertainment industry. And that's not how the world works outside of the United States. And so it was, weaponized sanctions have caused all sorts of problems and created chaos with people who may have been willing to do business with the United States and with United States companies. But because of the sanctions, because they didn't do exactly what we wanted them to do, we resorted to coercive means. And that coercive style of diplomacy, which is a core tenet of neoliberalism, by the way, that's really hurt us long term. And those chickens are getting ready to come home to roost, I think. So, Log Cabin School and Comments, Americans as a group are not Han, and we have a continent that we have a continent that they've convinced themselves belongs to them. Yeah, there's an element of that. We certainly have a brewing ethnic strife that is happening. Not in all cases, but that narrative is there, and that's again what I was talking about with the othering castigating other folks out there. You're not exactly like me, so I'm gonna other you, and therefore I can dehumanize you, and then you become a legitimate military target. That's a continuum that genocides operate in. And so yeah, it's. But again, there has to be an economic component. In communist China, the Chinese Revolution, there was absolutely an economic component. The United States did not do everything in its power to prevent Chiang Kai-shek from being pushed off the continent and onto Taiwan. They absolutely. I don't want to say paved the way for Mao Zedong, but there was a number of sympathetic supporters in the United States government, particularly in the State Department, that were communists, right? They absolutely were communists. This was a major problem. Evans Carlson, who is the founder of 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, was a communist. He was actually an army officer first in World War One, went to China to fight alongside the communists, and a lot of the doctrine that they were utilizing at the small unit level, 12-man squads, the leadership technique, which would become known as a Chinese fire drill, but the Marines adopted this as a term, gung ho, means all together. It doesn't mean a very motivated guy. It means we're all together in this. And what gung ho meant was that we all decide that this is a solid course of action that we are going to take. And so Evans Carlson brought that to the Marine Corps when World War II was about to break out. He was, he joined the Marine Corps, then he became an officer, retired as a colonel, and he was given the charge of 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, not the 1st, because he was known to be a communist, and the Marine Corps leadership and the U.S. Department of War at the time, which would become the DoD, did not trust him at all. But they did take his techniques because they were sound, and they adopted them across the Marine Corps. The Army borrowed a few of them, but it's another conversation. The Army's structured differently for a different purpose. But anyhow, the rise of China. I saw somebody scroll down that talking about Clinton. Chinese didn't have anything until Clinton. No, that's not exactly correct. Nixon is the one that really got it started. There it is. Thanks, brother. China had nothing until Bill Clinton invited them to WTO in 1996. I mean, you're not wrong. But I just want to elaborate a little bit further. That Clinton, what he was doing was furthering the role that China had in the agreements that were already made on part of the Nixon administration. So it's, as much as I fucking hate Clinton, and boy, I love to hate on some Clintons. Nixon had a role too, man. You can't leave Tricky Dicky out there. Yeah, he greenlit some problems that occurred that I think were short sighted. Do I think that there was some grand strategy to it, man? I don't know. That's above my pay grade. But they definitely, I think what my idea on this is that there definitely is a lot of short-sighted decisions that were made, and it enabled China to the degree that we see now, that's bringing us where we are. And so, Prince Self, you got another comment here. Do you think there's going to be massive violence in 2024? Yep. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's I think so. I know we've been going hard at it tonight. Something I want to kind of point out. This is something that I've told a lot of folks in class, breaking down the eras of Antifa, because on the right, we kind of have this view of Antifa as like a thing, like all right. So they have existed in the United States well over a decade. Kind of, there's been generations of them, and I'm going to explain this in sociological terms, with plenty of history to back this up. I've written numerous articles over the past decade that's covering all this in detail. Um, the first generation of Antifa 1.0 that we saw in just sort of really gaining steam with Jim Goad was, anybody knows Jim Goad is kind of journalist, writes for Taki. Occasionally he's written some interesting books. Anyway, I know a lot of libertarians are familiar with him, but he was kind of talking about the punk rock scene in Portland and Seattle. His stomping grounds, that whole area of the Pacific Northwest where he's from. And he was kind of identifying early on the groundwork for a lot of the stuff. And a lot of it comes out of the punk rock scene. That's why I think this whole reaction to Green Day and everything for New Year's is hilarious to me, because the leopard don't change his spots. Like you do not expect anything different. It's like asking Rage Against the Machine to talk about the merits of capitalism. Like, it ain't gonna fucking happen. Like, whatever. I don't like their music. I don't like Green Day's music anyway. Never liked them. They're annoying. Rage Against the Machine, I like them. I don't like communists, but I like their music. It's all right. Anyway, Guerrilla Radio, Rage Against the Machine, Battle of Los Angeles, shit's classic. Anyway, to the point though. So the early groundwork of Antifa was made up of misfits, essentially, like punk rock types. They got all their fucking, symbols, tattoos, and stuff, straight edge shit. Like, these are people who are not really, they're tied at the hip to the music scene. A lot of them, get into heroin and pills and, like, all the stuff that goes along with it. They're not really productive people, generally speaking. And so they have a short window of viability as fighters, as your brawlers, as your skirmishers, getting out there doing stuff, and so you really only get a little bit of time out of them, a few years before they OD on whatever. They fucking just buy a house, settle down, whatever it is. Like, they just kind of, fade off into the sunset. So Antifa 1.0 in the United States was very much a product of that. Then you had guys who were going into the military during the GWAT. And these are the guys that I call the searchers, right? They came out of the global war on terror. They came out of the military. A lot of guys, and I knew several dudes that were like this. They weren't really politically aligned or grounded while they were in. And so now all of a sudden they're dealing with trauma, man, like serious trauma, psychological trauma, mental trauma. Like, they went into the Army, Marine Corps, like wherever it was, their kids, young adults, and they don't, like, for a lot of reasons, they just don't really know why they're there, and these are the guys that do one tour, get out. Like, they do one enlistment, get out. They're seeing all sorts of fucked up shit, man, and they come back, and now all of a sudden, like, they come back, they're so used to living the barracks lifestyle of, partying with women, got booze everywhere, man, I'm, fucked up my back and in a jump. And now all of a sudden I'm gonna fucking, doc gave me Percocets. Now all of a sudden I can't sleep at night. So I got to go to the shrink. But when I go to the shrink, they're going to yank my security clearance. Oh man, like all the shit, right? This all has a snowball effect. And say, give me SSRIs and so these dudes end up getting out. This is part of the reason that the whole 22 a day thing is a thing, right? But then what's the next step? You can't find viable employment because a lot of these guys are mentally unstable still, and they're not necessarily getting what they need. So Bullet Junkie, Antifa was created way before this guy was. Yeah. Okay. I can back my stuff up with things. Yeah, I know first generation Antifa, 1938. All right. Cool. I'm talking about contemporary stuff, bud. Yeah, anyway. But good on you. Good on you. I'm glad you wasted the few moments of your life to type that out. And now, there you go. So anyway, but these guys got out. So what's the next step for them? They go to college, right? They get their GI Bill, they go to college. Now they're searching for something. Veterans began to really foment, right? They really began to gain some steam. This is a group that went dormant, completely dormant after Vietnam. Well, where did they come from? Students for a Democratic Society, SDS, oh, that's another legacy group, had actually never really went away, and they themselves insulated in academia, right? Because a lot of your academics, academics back then, they were activists. They became academics because this is a good environment for them to exist in. Well, now you're fomenting what's going to be a future revolution. And in order to do that, you have to have a cadre, military cadre, begin to recruit them. How do I know? Because these guys tried to recruit me. That's how I know. And I had several friends, one of which, in fact, who ended up being one of the primary organizers of the Dakota Access Pipeline protest. So if you remember what that was, dial that one back a few years. This is how I know these things. All right. What is that?
One of my motion sensors
Oh,
outside.
I thought somebody was playing like God is a Serve or
We're gonna have a
something.
polka.
No,
Anyway,
I can't change the tune on it.
So anyhow, you've got a brooding military cadre, right? So what do you do next? Now I need foot soldiers and I need them to be trained. Well, Syria kicks off, and Antifa went to Syria, stood up a school, right? It was called the Academy. Rolling Stone did an excellent piece on this, and they invited in all their international volunteers. And so you've got all these guys that are now getting there. They're getting combat training. The YPG is training them, the YPG of the People's Resistance Army of the Kurds, which are communists, by the way. I like the Kurds, but these are communist organizations. It's I worked with the Kurds; they're cool people, but the reality is what it is. Anyway, with that said, you've got getting combat experience. They come back. They start coming back by 2015. Now they're back. Oh, 2015. What started happening in 2015? Then 2016. Then 2017, 2018. So you're talking about a decade here where there's a lot of conflict in the streets, right? But a lot of these guys are starting to age out. Your core cadre is always going to be there, but these guys are aging out, so they're pulling out. They're pulling out. And now you have to have a new one. All right, you got to have a new one. This is why early on in Ukraine, and this is also, by the way, you saw groups like John Brown Gun Club, Redneck Revolt. They were becoming more armed. They're out there. Kurds aren't telling their children they're gender fluid, Matt. Hey, man, they're not. But there's a lot of women's lib that is going on with them. They believe in all of the feminist stuff. Look up Murray Bookchin for all the quote unquote anarchists. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. Yeah, go look up Murray Bookchin. Maury Bookchin, who died a few years ago, his daughter is frequently a guest on Democracy Now! If you don't know what that is, then you definitely don't understand the left. They did several parts on this, and in detail, and there's several documentaries about the YPG and the JPG, and all of this. So while they may not tell their kids they're gender fluid, they definitely ain't too opposed to that. And in fact, they only there was a group called Tequila. And I don't. It was Trans Queer Liberation something or another. It was an organization in Syria and Rojava specifically. They only asked them to leave. They had a big blow up on Reddit. They only asked them to leave after they sort of caused too many problems, and they didn't want to go out and actually fight or do anything productive. So they told them to get out of there. So and that was when things started really coming unravel rather. Then you got Ukraine. So Ukraine kicks off. Notice early on in Ukraine, so we're talking about 2 years ago, you had all of these, this call for foreign volunteers. You notice you don't see that anymore. There were a lot of foreign volunteers that were going there to fight. A lot of them got killed too. But that became the next generation. That became the cadre. All right. Those that returned from that are the ones that you will see next. They are well trained, right? What you see, the clown show that you see in a lot of the stuff, that's just noise. There's I'm not going to give them too much credit, but they definitely understand Carver, which is criticality, accessibility, recognizability, vulnerability, effect, and recuperability, right? This is how you target things in a UW environment. Literally, and by the way, guys, 100% of this is completely off the cuff. There ain't no notes out here. This is what I pulled up on my computer as my task list. Literally, I'd put everything in Post-it notes. But we're seeing this already. The attacks on the grid, right? They're running around shooting the grid up in Moore County. That was a coordinated attack, right? 100%. What did it coincide with? A drag queen story time hour, right? And Jacob in the comments, the Reddit brigade. Yeah, Reddit is a big part of their internal propaganda. You have two types of propaganda, two broad types. You have external propaganda, which is meant to recruit or change a public opinion, a general opinion about something. And then you have internal propaganda, which its purpose is to galvanize the outward message and to galvanize your base. That's its purpose. And so Reddit is very much that internal propaganda. And so yeah, that's all part of it. So this is what we're seeing, man. This is where it's headed. And yeah, dude. So told you all that to tell you this.
Yeah.
Think that there's going to be violence? 100%. 100% chance of political violence. I'll tell you.
I agree.
So the current situation in the United States, from a asymmetric warfare, like if I was doing an asymmetric warfare rundown of the United States, there are three competing entities with one another for control. The right, whatever you want to call the conservative movement, which has factions in and of it to itself that we all know and love. The United States government, which is its own thing, and then there's the militant left, and the militant left is very much at war with the United States government. Very much at war with the United States government. The problem is that the United States government does not see or recognize that they are a problem. And this is because their political masters don't see them as the militant left as a problem. They see them as an ally of convenience and nothing more. and something that they can control. And the people that are behind
Useful
the
video.
scenes, the political junkies, the wranglers that do all this stuff in the background, because that's how politics really work, by the way. Assassin of the Gray, they see him as an asset. Yeah, 100%. Their whole model, the political advisory committees, these guys like, Karl Rove was one, Scooter Libby, like we know these as conservatives, we know these types of people, Steve Bannon and such. Like we know these guys, but they have them on the left too. You just don't really hear about them that much. Krasenstein's brothers, those two are really good examples of this. James Carville, he's another one. James Carville, the ugliest man in the universe. I'm from Louisiana. But anyway, I can't with that guy. I love to make fun of him. So squishy face. Anyhow, they're telling them that no, you can't say nothing bad to this crowd because that's your base. See, that's you can't say nothing bad to them, and that's why the whole thing is panning out the way it is. But we're seeing them rapidly spiral out of control. I mean, the airports. I mean, airports rank. They peg that whole Carver meter. I think the whole Carver matrix. That's 5s across the board. Like that's and they think about it, man. They shut down today. They shut down JFK Airport with a balloon. A balloon. Or was it yesterday? I don't know. Days.
That was yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yes.
I've been busy trolling people, man. I can't keep up with all this shit. But no, I mean, if you think about it though, like how big of a win is that in unconventional warfare? You shut down a whole airport. How much economic disruption, like the second and third order effects, did that cause? So, final question, I guess, it's 2 hours. I don't know how long y'all want to go, but
I need to start wrapping up because I got to get to bed in a minute.
Say, what can we do? So at this point, I'm going to tell you, you probably get sick of hearing this, and I totally get it. Everybody out there, I totally get it. Like, you hear all of the, you got to be prepared, and you got to have the stuff, you got to buy all the things. Totally get it. I'm right there with you. You get burned out on that, and you want a political solution. But I want to offer you this. A decade ago, you never would have seen candidates like Marjorie Taylor Greene. For all her, like, whether you love her or hate her, you never would have seen a candidate like that. You never would have seen a guy like Bill Paxton being the Texas AG. You never would have seen a candidate like our lieutenant governor. Mark Robinson's running for governor. I think he's going to be the next governor of North Carolina. Never would have seen a guy like that. Ron DeSantis is another example. I know, like, the whole Trump DeSantis thing, like, whatever. Man, you never would have, a decade ago, you never would have seen a candidate say and do things that he did, right? You wouldn't have seen it. And so that there has to be every movement that has an armed component to it, has a mass base of the unconventional, the UW warfare underground, right? It also has a political component, political representation. You have to have that. And so we're getting that. And we're getting to that point where we have a political class that is rapidly clawing their way into the mainstream. And it's a trickle up effect, which is very good to see. Your role in that, sorry, I'm not a politician, I'm not, whatever. Your role in that is to be ready to be an asset. Okay. Be ready to be an asset. You need to step back and ask yourself, what do I bring to the table? Whatever it is. Whatever it is. Whatever that may be, what skill set do I have? What equipment do I have? I promise you, everybody's got something they bring to the table. Everybody's got something. And you have to be ready for that at the local most level. And that the organization will occur, right? It'll foment. And that the organization usually occurs towards the end of the build-up cycle. Sometimes it is the very end, and sometimes it's in reaction to some sort of external stimuli, which I think is going to happen on the right. It's going to be that final impetus, usually, which will be a disruption in critical infrastructure. And so I predict there's absolutely going to be political violence, 100%, without a doubt. You'll see it, and the smash and grab, looting, and all this stuff. This is all a component of it too, by the way. These things aren't just happening in free space; they're being coordinated. Last little reference that I'll give you: the Battle of Algiers. You can find it free on YouTube. Battle of Algiers. Go and watch that. It'll be 2 hours of your life that's probably better spent than listening to, me. I promise. It is French. It's an old French film. That is a blueprint of insurgencies. There's a reason that it is still watched literally everywhere, including, the Pentagon, Special Operations Command. I know the Asymmetric Warfare Group, that was the professional reference of choice, among other things, but that definitely was one of the tops of the list as a professional development film, right? So do watch that. And again, you're on YouTube already. So as soon as we're done with this podcast, type in the Battle of Algiers, hit a bookmark, watch it tomorrow, watch it in parts, whatever, doesn't matter. Very, very interesting. And you're going to see, and what I want you to do, and this is something I used to do with sociology undergrads, by the way, I would tell them because once upon a time I taught in academia, some people just have a hard time believing that. This is how I know all these things about contemporary Antifa. That's why that dude in the comments is such a clown. I knew what he wanted to say. He floated right on in here. Have a notebook handy when you're watching. You should always have a notebook when you watch things anyway. And I want you to write down each one of the critical incidents that happen that moves the plot along. Write down each one of them. The police officer getting assassinated by the kid, the bombings that happened. Like, write down each one of those. And I want you to go back and look at the news stories over the past 12 months and find something that correlates to that. This is a very simple exercise that'll begin your awareness of unconventional warfare. And you're going to begin to understand a broader picture of what's occurring. I'm not telling you to be paranoid. I'm just telling you what is. And I think that the Battle of Algiers was made in 1954, I think, if I remember right. That is going to be your visitor from the future. Princess Self, one more comment here. I'm sorry if I'm asking dumb questions. This is scary, all of it. Yeah, I'm right there with you. They're not dumb questions at all. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Well, for the most part. You're certainly not asking any dumb questions. You're asking what it was on everybody else's mind, and you're right. I'm right there with you. This stuff is terrifying. I mean, we all have families. We all have our loved ones. We all want to navigate these waters. We're very concerned about the direction of our country, and it's the slide into totalitarianism. There doesn't really seem like many good answers that are being offered out there. So yeah, absolutely, and I'm right there with you. I want a better world for our next generation following on.
Those of us that have got kids and grandkids and understand some of this stuff, none of us find it fun or desirable.
Yeah.
But we pay attention to it because we've got those grandkids and grandkids that we want to do the best we can to take care of them should the inevitable happen.
Yep.
So
I agree. It's going to get bad.
I know we could go on. We could go on all night for sure, and I sincerely appreciate your time, as you know.
Hey man, I'll go as long as you want to go.
I know. And if I didn't have to get up and get behind that sewing machine tomorrow, we'd keep right on going. But unfortunately, there's people that's wanting their gear, and I can't make the gear if I don't get sleep.
Myself included. I got stuff that.
Yeah. Somebody's waiting on some stuff.
There's a whole lot of people waiting on some desert night camo chest rigs. It may or may not be in stock soon. You know,
you're giving away the secrets, but
it's not a
no,
secret. It's not a secret. It's been on the store.
Not anymore.
Brushbeater.store. It's been up there. It's been there's been people signing up for that because I have the back in stock notifications. There's going to be a lot of sad pandas whenever you do finally get that wrapped up and sent out. Because I promise you, as soon as I put it up, they're going to sell out like within a couple minutes, probably. Just like the M81 Woodland ones did. They was like they were here. It's like South Park, and it's gone. Like exact same, dude. Exact same.
Yeah. Well, look, I appreciate you being here. I know your time is a valuable thing. So on that note, I'll let you get back to doing what you need to do. Again, the whole point of this exercise is just, look, people, there's some certain things that are going to be inevitable. You need to educate yourself and you need to get yourself as ready as you can. There's a lot of resources out there. You just got to take advantage of them and do it. So, Noel, you got anything you want to toss before we go out?
Thanks a lot for coming on. You got a lot of wisdom to spread. And I'm going to repeat what I say every single time. I've already said it once. Guys, you hear what's coming. Matt told you kind of what's going to happen. Don't sit behind your keyboard and think everything's going to be fine. Get out, go to the range, go patrolling, get your butt in shape, learn how to make a fire. Do something. Get out and do something to better yourself and better your family. And that's my piece.
Yep. All right. Links are in the description box for anybody that wants them. Brushbeater.org, brushbeater.store. They're right there in the description. Don't post in the comments 3 weeks from now, where can I get the stuff at? Because I'm telling you, it's right in the description box. And I say that because I just today had somebody comment on a video the other day asking about something that I specifically explained in the video. And then you're asking me again in the comments. I can't. I try to answer comments as much as I can, but guys, I don't have time to repeat things that I've already answered in the video. So here's your warning. It's in the description box. Click the links. They're right there. They'll take you to the place. So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up. Matt, you got any final words other than that?
Been talking for 2 hours, man. Whoa, out.
You ready to get to them post-it notes?
Yeah, get cracking.
There's always that one guy. All right, guys, y'all take care. Matt, I appreciate it. Yeah. And
God bless
we'll catch y'all in another one. Noel and I are going to try.
Anytime you want me on, just let me know. I will be there.
Well, I don't know if Noel and I are going to do one next week. We got some stuff coming up next week. It's going to be a pretty crammed week, so we may skip next week. But by the end of the month, we hope to get back on a regular schedule like we were right before the holidays showed up. So, all right.
I won't talk as much.
Y'all get out and it's all good. That's why I had you here. Saves me and Noel from having to do all the talking.
That's right. I just sit back and let them go.
That's right.
Just line it up and shoot it in the right direction. All right. You guys take care. We'll see you in another one.